again, everybody. I am Katey Rich from cinemablend.com.
And I'm Nathaniel Rogers from thefilmexperience.net.
And we're back together again to talk about another new release for the summer. This one a little bit smaller than most of the big blockbuster stuff that you've probably been seeing, and it's called Moon. It is the debut feature from a director called Duncan Jones, and a big old starring vehicle for Sam Rockwell, who you've seen in everything. He's all over the place. It's a little movie. It's made for less than $5 million, but it's a pretty interesting one. It takes place in the not-so-distant future, in which we have set up bases on the moon to mine helium, and that somehow powers the Earth.
It's science is about fusion power.
Yeah, thank man, you remember the details.
But it was whoosh,
yeah,
over my head.
It doesn't really matter. Basically, they have this pretty terrible setup where the one person who is manning the entire lunar base is one guy. He's by himself for a 3-year tour of duty, and that guy is played by Sam Rockwell, who's also named Sam in the movie. And you meet him when he's almost at the end.
Yeah,
he's got about 3 weeks left.
Yeah, he's very close, so he's basically like scratching off the days.
Yeah, you can tell he's kind of losing it. The only person he's had to talk to this whole time is the robot, who is named Gertie, and is voiced by Kevin Spacey. And it's not an R2-D2 robot, it's kind of a big box. Very reminiscent of HAL.
Right. It's a smart choice for the film because it comes from that school of science fiction. It's not a big action adventure. Mm-hmm. It's a more philosophical.
Much more of a psychological level.
Yeah.
We're going to talk quasi-spoilers right now, which is just what's covered in the trailer, because this is a very hard movie to talk about without having some spoilers. Later on, we're going to get into some more specific details, and then we'll have a big spoiler warning.
We'll flash
we'll let you know.
At you.
But so right now, we're going to talk about what you see in the trailer, which is that Sam is off on a mission on the lunar surface and crashes. And then when he returns, he finds that there is another version of himself walking around the base.
A double. So
a double. There is a double of Sam, and he doesn't know why. And that's where things really start to get interesting for our lunar miners.
But before we get to the spoilers, we wanted to talk more a little bit about the filmmaking. Mm-hmm. We both thought it was a very successful movie, especially for a first film.
And especially for such a cheap one.
Yeah, and for such a cheap one. It cost less than $5 million?
$5 million, yeah.
And there's basically only 2 sets. You have the outside set, which they use a lot of models and miniatures for.
Mm-hmm. For the rovers and for the bases, that the satellites on the surface and everything like that.
So when he goes out to mine the helium, which is his job there, he's in the outdoor set, which is the moon.
Yeah.
And it looks amazing.
It looks unbelievable.
I love old school work, like models, because there's real gravity to it, even though you're on the moon, so that's a funny thing to say.
Yeah.
But the light is, I thought the cinematography was really exciting in the movie, because when he's outside, it's all these man-made structures to mine the helium, and there's such a harsh lighting on him, and through the sort of glass of his rover, and that's at a stark contrast to all the interiors, which we wanted to talk about, the production design.
Yeah, it's not only that it feels very real and there's a lot of it for such a cheap budget, but it feels very lived in. He's been there for 3 years. He hasn't been maintaining the place. His spacesuit is filthy. Yeah. Gertie is filthy. And it's got that very 70s vibe of a sci-fi movie. It's not the bright and shiny new Star Trek kind of thing. It's a much more, I would say, realistic vision of what space can be.
It definitely feels plausible.
Yeah.
And as we get into the spoilers, the really great thing about the plot development is that also feels plausible, even though it's science fiction.
Even though it's science fiction, yeah. And then I think, along with production design, I think the other thing that really makes this movie a success is Sam Rockwell. Duncan Jones specifically wanted to make a movie with Sam Rockwell, which is why he made this movie to begin with. And he, as we said before, there's a double of him on there, so he's playing 2 roles, which we'll talk about more later. He's just got that intensity combined with an openness that makes him really effective in this role. You had a kind of a theory about it being almost documentary acting.
Yeah, it's just that he just is. There's not a sense that he's performing for you, which I think makes the fact that as we move into the spoilers. Yeah. Make the fact that you're seeing more than one of him really interesting, because he's also not performing for. Well, let's splash the spoilers.
Yeah, let's go into spoilers so that we can talk really, because his performance, what makes it so impressive, really gets into spoilers. So from this point on, we're talking about the main plot of the movie, if you haven't seen it yet, spoiler. If you haven't seen it yet, don't watch this, and watch this after you see it.
Yeah, so basically, when he has the crash, which we briefly mentioned, the next time you see him, he's waking up in a hospital room, and he sees someone who looks just like him, and we find out, as the story goes, as he finds out, that it is a clone. But what's really interesting about his performance, because we talked in the lived-in quality, is that his performance as the two different versions of himself is different.
Yeah,
and you get the feeling that the new clone is not worn down. He doesn't question his sanity. He takes care of himself. So they look a lot different, even though they're both Sam Rockwell. And there's this sort of really fun aspect to the performance of, if you meet yourself, how are you going to feel about yourself?
Yeah, there's going to be a lot of things that you don't necessarily like.
That part is really fun, and when you have a movie that's basically a one-man show, as this is, anything that can bring in different tones and different sort of tweaks to the characterizations and to the story just makes it so much more enjoyable.
And there's a humor in it, too. In their rivalry, they kind of have a sibling rivalry thing going on as they try to figure out what's going on, and it's just really fun to see him act. You don't feel like it's just Sam Rockwell, you feel like there are two actors on that stage, and
you don't see that line in between them. That
exactly.
You used to see in the old movies.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, the doubling work, talking about the way it looks, the doubling work is unbelievable. They fight, they play ping pong with each other. It's really great. And it's simple. That's one of the oldest movie tricks that we have, but it still is always impressive. And the thing about Rockwell, even though this is an intense role for him, it's very, he's hermetically sealed inside the set. He's just acting against himself. He doesn't have that, like, Christian Bale, deep intensity, not meanness, but you enjoy watching him, you enjoy being with him, and he feels more like a real person than maybe one of the other more intense actors.
Big fan of his performance.
Yeah.
Completely carries the movie, so hopefully it'll give him more chances to have meatier roles. As he always livens things up from the sidelines, but sometimes it's nice to see those people get
the lead part. So with the introduction of the clone, that you get into kind of the philosophical underpinnings of the movie, which is just the ethics of clones and the ethics of treating people this way. There's like a whole unit of Sams who are going to get revived over and over again to mine this station. And that's, while I really enjoy the philosophies brought up in there, that's where I think the movie stumbles a little bit, because it doesn't really establish a satisfying reason for it. And then as you get into the conclusion, it becomes even more jumbled.
Yeah, if it's a little jumbled and truncated, like you find out he has the double fairly early in the movie, but because he's naturally very confused about it, they develop that in a really good, solid way where you're sort of with him as you're discovering him, but that takes up most of the film.
Yeah.
So by the time all this can of worms has been opened, essentially the movie's ending. The movie's wrapping up.
Yeah, that's true. And you feel like there could be a whole nother adventure with the two of them.
And they address that a little bit in kind of like it's not a narration so much as like sort of an audio epilogue.
Yeah.
We're not going to get into exactly what happens at the very end, but I felt that was really truncated too.
Yeah, there's definitely be a lot more to it. And he suggested that in his next movie is going to have Sam Rockwell's Sam character in the beginning to kind of explain what happens. So maybe it won't feel so truncated once we see the sequel.
Yeah. One of the reasons to recommend it, and that we've really enjoyed talking about it, and this is not our first conversation about it, is that it is one of those movies that feels more complete after you've talked about it with your friends afterwards.
Definitely, and it's really inspires conversation, which not a lot of movies do, and it's not in a nitpicking way, because it really fits together very well. The story all fits together, but in a what does this mean? How does this affect you? Kind of way. So I think we both would really recommend Moon.
Yes.
It makes for great kind of programming to the big summer stuff, and it's a really promising start for Duncan Jones.
Yeah, looking forward to film number 2.
Yeah, and then he's making a movie about people escaping from a submarine, which, may happen however long in the future. But yeah, he's a guy to watch out for. Yeah. So yes.
Watch out for him.
Watch out for that Duncan Jones. So yeah, that's our review of Moon. Thank you for watching us again. I'm Katey from cinemablend.com.
And I'm Nathaniel Rogers from thefilmexperience.net.
And we will talk to you later.
Yeah, and we'd especially love to hear your comments about this movie once you've seen it.
Yes.
Because as we said, it's more complete once you've discussed it.
Definitely.
So if you have seen it, feel free to...
And this is just the beginning of the conversation, we hope.
Right.
So, yeah, yell at us and just don't, talk about the movie, not about our appearances, because we're sensitive. All right.